Hey guys, in today's video we're going to be talking about Inferno 5 difficulty and the state of pre-farming in the game, and I also want to talk about PvE content and a bit more about the pay-to-win side of it. So let's just jump right in and look at one of the posts from the Diablo Immortal subreddit which caught my eye. And the title of the post is The Problem with Inferno 5 Difficulty. I'm going to have a quick read of what this poster says. So there are already posts because of BlizzEase's decision to tune the CR requirement for Inferno 5. A lot of people are defending the current situation, but it's just bad design in every single aspect. If they don't want us to pre-farm, hard lock it, but right now it's hard to achieve the needed combat rating before 700. In addition, the requirements for Inferno 5 dungeons are again 500 above the needed 4500 CR. This means that hitting 700 alone won't enable you to run dungeons on that difficulty. Also, the jump between I4 and I5 is 5k, and the jump between I5 and I6 is 2k combat rating. So we'll be able to pre-farm I6 as soon as we get the first Inferno 5 gear, but pre-farming I5 is bad. Again, what? How is there a single person defending the design flaws? And then he's got a screenshot of the dungeon combat rating for Inferno 5, which is 4600. So there's a lot to unpack here, but the most interesting claim which this poster made, which I'm kind of curious to take a deep dive on, is that he said hitting Paragon 700 alone won't enable you to run dungeons on that difficulty. So basically, even if you have the Paragon requirement for that difficulty, you still won't be able to run dungeons. And I really want to take a deep dive on this. But before we do that, let's take a quick look at the comments here. So the top two comments are pretty interesting. So the first comment says it's probably an oversight as they did lower the difficulty for Inferno 4 and Path of Blood. With these devs, you can't expect very high quality control. So he's taking a jab at the devs here, but he did make a fair point with the first sentence because they have in the past lowered the combat rating requirement for Inferno difficulties, and also for the Path of Blood, which had really insane combat rating, the most recent one, and they did fix that in game. So who knows, they might actually be lowering the combat rating of Inferno 5 in the future. So that's probably the most prominent opinion that people have, is that they might lower the combat rating for Inferno 5. And then the second camp of people have the opinion, like this commenter has said, and he says, wait till this month's Chinese New Year update and maybe we might get another 2 gear slots, who knows. So this is actually also a pretty valid opinion, and I'll explain why. But now that we've taken kind of the information from this post, let's go back to the game here. And the first thing that I want to see is that the combat rating for Inferno 5. So Inferno 4 has 41.1k combat rating requirement, whereas Inferno 5 has 45.6. So that's roughly 4.5k combat rating difference between Inferno 4 and Inferno 5. And then for Inferno 6, we have 47.6k, which is roughly 2k higher than Inferno 5. So right off the bat, these numbers are a lot higher than I expected. Because I'm lucky enough to be in the Diablo partner program, I had access to the test version of the major update before the patch went live, and the numbers in that patch were a lot lower than this. If I remember correctly, they were roughly 1k lower for each of these difficulties. So I am surprised that they went for such a high required combat rating. I want to quickly take this chance to talk about the combat rating mechanic as a whole, because I think it's really important, and in my opinion all players should have basic understanding of this mechanic, because to be honest it's linked to pretty much everything in this game, and it's even linked to all of your gear pieces. So I think it's really important that we just start off there. So if we just open my inventory and take a look at my character stats here, we can see that I have a combat rating of 44.2k, and if we click on this, it says that this is compared against the enemy combat rating, modifying all damage you take, and your combat rating is 3.1k higher than the combat rating of monsters in your level, and this is because I'm on Inferno 4 difficulty currently. And it says that I'm going to get an increase to all damage I deal by 11%, so I get a bonus of 11% damage, and it decreases the damage I take by 10%. Against players, you cannot gain more than 10% damage increase or reduction. But if I were to go ahead and switch to Inferno 5, you can see that this is much higher combat rating than what I have, so I'm more than 1k combat rating under. And if we just do this again, we can see that right now I'm 1.3k, almost 1.4k combat rating lower, and this means that I'm gonna have a decrease to the damage I deal by 98%, which is huge, and also I take an increased damage by almost 8,000%. So the important thing to note is that there's two parts that are affected by the combat rating difference. One is the damage that you deal, and also the other one is the damage that you take. So why is this important? Well, not only is combat rating linked to the difficulties that you have here, but it's also linked to the difficulties of the Heliquary and also the Heliquary Gauntlet. And this means that to unlock new difficulties, let's say that I want to unlock Inferno 6 here, I'd have to defeat the last boss of the Heliquary here. And as you can see, I'm way under the combat rating for this boss here. It's like 3k under, so this is not going to happen, obviously. But even for some players here that want to unlock Inferno 5, now that we're getting closer to the Inferno 5 difficulty, they're even struggling with this, and myself included, because I'm roughly 1,000 combat rating under. I'm not really able to clear this boss because I'm just taking so much damage and I'm not able to deal the damage. So let's just take a quick example here of this boss here. So for this boss, you can see that the required combat rating is 44,765, and right now I'm roughly 44,200, so I'm roughly 500 combat rating, give or take. And let's just try to enter the boss here and see how we do. So I'm not going to do the whole fight here, I just kind of want to prove a point to you guys about how this works. So if you're 500 combat rating under, the point that I want to show is that it's still kind of possible for you to be able to have some impact and still be able to kind of clear the fight. So here we go, let's just try here our best. So it doesn't show me the combat rating here for some reason while I'm clearing the legs, but I'll just try to clear these off really quickly here, and then we can just take a look at the combat rating bonuses. But as you can see already, I'm actually able to do a pretty decent amount of damage, even though I am 500 combat rating under. So now that we have the boss here, it's kind of interesting to see. Now we can see that basically I take 300% more damage and I deal 76% less damage, but you can see that I'm not even pressing my skills, and the boss is almost kind of taken, he's down from 29 million to 22 million, which is quite a lot of damage already. So obviously I am able to clear this boss if I wanted to. So that's the point that I want to make, that even if you're kind of 500 combat rating or 600 combat rating under, you're still able to have a pretty decent impact. So now let's actually try the last boss here that has a combat rating requirement of 45.6k. I'm almost 1.4k combat rating under. I was lucky enough that one of my friends was able to help me with this fight to unlock Inferno 5, but for most players they're not going to be able to unlock Inferno 5, and I'll show you guys why. So the reason for this is that, as you can see, once I enter the fight, we can check our combat rating here, and you can see that it says that I'm almost 1.4k under, like I showed, and this means that I'm going to deal 98% less damage, take 7,700% more damage. So the point that I want to make here is that even if you're a really skilled player and you can avoid taking any hits, so basically this 7,700% extra damage that you're going to take becomes negligible, you're still dealing 98% less damage. And the problem with that is that with these Hellforge bosses, they have an enrage timer. So basically, if you don't deal enough damage in a decent amount of time, the boss is going to start to enrage. And at that point, basically what's going to happen is that you're going to get one shot because you're not able to avoid the attack. So once the boss enrages, it's going to do this attack that's undodgeable, and at that point you're not going to be able to do anything at all. And the other problem is that there's also certain mechanics which are built into the game which kind of act like damage checks, and because of those, if you don't kill a certain thing in a certain amount of time, you're going to just take a huge amount of damage, which is pretty much undodgeable. So in the case of this boss, I believe that in the second phase you have to kill some of the guards here, and if you don't kill the guards in a decent amount of time, these two walls on the sides that you can see with spikes, they're going to basically close in on you and end up killing you. So even if you do have enough damage to get into the second phase before the boss enrages, you're still going to have this damage check here. So I've just exited the raid because I'm currently not able to clear it myself, but as a general rule of thumb, what I want to say is that if you're under 500 to 600 combat rating, most content would be doable if you have a very optimized build. If you're under like 100 or 200, even with a non-optimized build, you should still be able to clear it. But the problem comes once you're 800 or 900 points under the combat rating, and this is when you're going to have 90% plus less damage dealt. And at that point, the content will become really hard to do, and you might need help from some of the higher spenders in the game. And I'll explain how combat rating ties into the spending in the game. But just before I do that, let's also mention the caps of combat rating. So I'm just going to switch over to normal difficulty here, and we can take a quick look. So in terms of the actual bonus that you can get from combat rating, so here for normal difficulty, I'm 44,000 combat rating above, but you can see that I'm not gaining above the 11% extra damage that I do. So the cap is that you get up to an 11% increase to the damage that you deal. You get a also bonus to 10% decrease damage that you take. So that's kind of the limit that you have. And then let's actually go back to Inferno 5 difficulty here, and I'll just prove the cap for the upper limit. So if I just take off all of my gear here for my legendaries, you can see that now I'm way under the combat rating. And if we Look here, I'm 22,000 combat rating lower, but you can see that the damage dealt has a cap of 98%, so this doesn't go lower than 98%, thankfully. I wish that this was actually a little bit higher, like 90%. That would kind of make content a bit more bearable for most players, but here we are, 98%, and then for the damage taken, it has a cap of 8,962, so that's kind of interesting to know. So I've just put all of my gear back on, and now that we have a basic understanding of the effects of combat rating, I want to take a look at the combat rating sources. So the first source of combat rating is the gear that you equip. So each piece of gear will tell you that it gives you combat rating. You can see here that each legendary piece tells you at the top that it has a specific combat rating, and the same for the set items, they also have a combat rating. So I don't want to go too far into how the actual combat rating for each piece of gear is calculated, but there are a few rules which each piece of gear kind of seems to follow, and that is that there's a base combat rating value where each piece of gear is never going to go under this base value for the difficulty. And when you get exceptional items, so you have 4 different camps of exceptional items. So that's 2-2 items, 3-2 items, 3-3 items, and 3-4 items. So what do I mean by that? Well, these are the exceptional items. So for example, this one here, it has 2 attributes and 2 magic attributes. So that makes it a 2-2. And then for this item here, you can see that it has 3 attributes and then 3 magic attributes. So that makes it a triple. And if we compare these 2 items, you can see that the base combat rating value is higher for the triple items. So this is going to be a bit easy to explain for Inferno 5 items because I've got a few here. So for example, here this pants is a double. You can see that is 290 combat rating. It's 2 attributes and 2 magic attributes. And then for the triple item, you can see here that it starts with a 40 combat rating base higher. So you can see that it has 3 attributes and 2 magic attributes, and it's 40 points higher than this item here. And then if we go to a triple item here, you can see that this helmet is 3 attributes and 3 magic attributes. This actually goes up to 2350, and I believe that for a triple 4 item it goes up to 2370. So basically what I'm trying to say is that the base value difference between a 2-2 exceptional and a 3-2 exceptional is 40 points, and then it goes up by 20 points for a triple, and then it goes up by another 20 points for a triple 4. And the other thing to note is that the combat rating value goes up by your Paragon level, so it depends on the Paragon level that you find the items at. Obviously, because I'm trying to pre-farm, these are all going to drop at Paragon 700, but let's say I'm farming on Inferno 4 at the same difficulty of my Paragon level. You can see that if we compare this item here, the chest piece is 2235, and if we look at the Paragon level that I found it at, which is all the way down here, is 652. And then if we look at the pants here, it's 2 points under, so 2233, which is 2 points under. And if we look at the Paragon that I found it at, is 649, so this is 2 Paragon levels under. So for each class of item, basically the combat rating is going up by +1 based on the level that you find it at. So that's the rules for the legendary items. For the set items, it works a little bit differently. It's kind of the same in terms of what I described for the exceptional items. So for the exceptional items, let's take, for example, this item here. It's a 2-2. You can see 2 attributes and 2 magic attributes. It starts at 2290, which is the same as the legendary items. And then for a triple 2, you can see that this item here has 3 attributes and 2 magic attributes. It's 40 points higher, which is just the same as the legendary items that I described. And then if we check a triple item, you can see that once again it's 20 combat rating above the triple 2 items. So it pretty much follows the same as the legendary items. The only difference is that set items don't seem to increase in combat rating with the Paragon level that you find it at. The combat rating potential is basically locked to the difficulty that you find them at. So this basically means that let's say that I'm on Inferno 5. You can see that this starts from Paragon 700. Let's say that I leveled all the way up to Paragon 750. The maximum combat rating that I gain from a triple item is not going to increase. It's always going to remain the same no matter if I keep leveling up. So this is always going to remain at 2350 as a cap. And the other thing to note is that there's no triple 4 items, so there's no 3 attribute, 4 magic attribute items for the set items. That's only just for legendary items. So now that we've gone over the combat rating that you get from gear, I want to talk about the other sources that you get, and the best way to show this is the Seeker's Path. For the Seeker's Path, I'm not going to go through everything here in detail, but basically you have 3 sources of combat rating. One is the Ancestral Tableau here that you can get combat rating from. The next one is the gear ranks, so you have the legendary gear going up to rank 30, and the set gear going up to rank 20. Each of these gives you combat rating. So here you can see it gives you 220 combat rating and 192 for the set items. And then lastly, you can get combat rating from the Heliquary, which you can rank up using Void Blood Slag, and you can get this up to a maximum of level 70 currently, which gives 770 combat rating. And then having each one of these demonic remains also gives you extra combat rating. So you can see here that one gives 427, 439. Each one of these basically will give you extra combat rating for having them slotted in. So far, everything that I've talked about that gives you combat rating is completely free to play friendly. And granted, it will take you time to rank up. Things like the Heliquary always take time, and you have to do the raids every week, and the tableau also takes time. You have to gain the activity, which is time gated, and the same with the gear ranks. This is also going to take you a lot of time to farm up. But where does the pay to win aspect come from exactly? Well, there's one more source of combat rating which quite a lot of players don't really mention, and I think that this is kind of the main issue of today's video, and that is the legendary gems. So legendary gems not only give you the extra resonance that you have, which is going to increase your base attributes, it also gives you extra combat rating. And this extra combat rating that you get is based off two things. It's based off the star count of the legendary gem, and it's also based off the rank that you have. So let's take, for example, here, if I just show some of my gems here, I've got Spiteful Blood here, and it's just a rank 1, and it's a 2-star. You can see that it's giving me 30 resonance and 12 combat rating. Now, I've also got a Spiteful Blood here, which is a 3-star. It's also a rank 1, and you can see that it's giving me 30 extra resonance, but it's also giving me extra combat rating. So compared to the 2-star, you can see that this one is giving me 18 and 60 resonance, and then for the 4-star, it's more of the same. It's going to give me even more resonance, 90 resonance and 22 combat rating, and I haven't got a 5 out of 5 here, but for the 5 out of 5, it's going to give you an extra 100 resonance and also 24 combat rating. So basically, if you were to get a 5 out of 5 gem all the way up to rank 10, it's going to give you an extra 1000 resonance and also an extra 240 combat rating. So for a player who wants to get the maximum combat rating from gems, they'd have to have all of their gems up to rank 10, and they'd all have to be 5 out of 5, which would put you at 8k resonance. So bear in mind that all the gems that you slot within a gem don't give you extra combat rating, they only give you extra resonance. So you can see here for this Mother's Lament that I have socketed in, it's only giving me plus 10 resonance. It doesn't give any combat rating. So technically you can get the maximum amount of combat rating just by getting all of these gems to rank 10, and you don't have to worry about the gems inside it. So if we take a player who has all of their legendary gem slots filled in with 5 out of 5 gems which are rank 10, this means that they'll have 240 combat rating per slot, and if we do 240 multiplied by 8, this gives us 1920 combat rating. So that is actually quite a huge amount of combat rating, and I want to just give an example as to how much this extra combat rating from legendary gems can affect players. And I'm going to do this by comparing two different character profiles of two players who are my friends, and both of them are heavy grinders. So for the profile of the first player here, he's a heavy grinder like I said, but he's a low spender. He's not completely free to play, but he will pick up the battle pass here and there. And as you can see, his combat rating is 44,845. Let's take a quick look at his resonance now. He's got about 2.5k resonance from his gems, and you can see that from his gear here. You're able to see that most of it is pretty much triple or triple 2, and you can see that almost all his gear is close to 2.3k, which is really good for the Paragon level that we're at currently. And for his set items, you can see that most of them are triple 2 or triple 3, so they're all above 2200 combat rating for Inferno 4. And the other thing you can see is that his intelligence stat is 339, so that's how much he has from his ancestral tableau. I'm just going to quickly show his legendary gems here, so you can see that he's gaining around 300 resonance for each one, and each one is giving him roughly 78 combat rating. So on average, if we take the average of his gems here, most of his gems are 3 out of 5 rank 4, 5-star gems, and this gives him 78 combat rating per gem. So moving on now to show the profile of Grinder B, this player is also a very heavy grinder, and unlike the first player, this player is more of a higher spender. And you can see that his combat rating is 46,131, and his resonance is just over 10,000. So I want to also show his gear for the legendary and set items, so we can see exactly where he's getting the extra combat rating from. So as you can see, his legendary gear is quite similar to the first player. Almost all of his items are close to 2.3k, and for the set items you can see it's more of the same. Most of them are triple 2 or triple 4 items, and you can also see that his ancestral tableau is at 340, So it's about one upgrade higher than the last player, but it's also very similar. And his Reliquary is also in a similar spot. It's also at rank 70. And as far as the legendary gem goes, this is where it gets a bit interesting. So he's obviously got all of his gems at 5 out of 5 and also rank 10. So this gives him the maximum combat rating, which is 240 per gem. The really crazy thing here is that this player actually has a higher combat rating than the requirement for Inferno 5 dungeons, so he's already able to pre-farm Inferno 5 dungeons. So I want to do some maths here and compare both of these players. So for Grinder A, who's a low spender, he has a total combat rating of 44,445, total resonance of 2.5k, and for Grinder B, who's the high spender, he has a total combat rating of 46,131 and a total resonance of 10k. And like we've established, they have almost identical gear, so they're getting the same combat rating from that. They have the same maximum gear ranks, they have almost the same Ancestral Tableau rank, and they also roughly have the same combat rating that they're gaining from the Reliquary. So the only difference in combat rating is coming from the legendary gems. So for Grinder A, his average gem is a 3 out of 5 gem at rank 4, which gives 78 combat rating, and for Grinder B, his average gem is a 5 out of 5 at rank 10, which gives 240 combat rating. So if we take the difference of these two numbers, which is 240 minus 78, we get roughly 162 combat rating per slot, and if we multiply this 162 by 8 for the 8 legendary gem slots, we get 1296. And the interesting thing here is that if we add this 1296 onto the total combat rating of Grinder A, we get 46,141, which is actually 10 combat rating higher than Grinder B. So basically what this means is that both of these players are pretty equal and they're grinding roughly the same amount, but because of the combat rating from the legendary gems, Grinder B is actually able to pre-farm Inferno 5 and Inferno 5 dungeons. So if we look in game, we can see that for Inferno 5, like I said, it's 45,665, and then for Inferno 5 dungeons, we can check the combat rating here. It's actually 46,115. So Grinder B is able to do both of these activities, whereas Grinder A unfortunately doesn't even have the combat rating required to do the raid for Inferno 5 to unlock Inferno 5. So they're not even able to unlock the difficulty itself without actually getting extra help from other players, which is really unfortunate. So this is why I think a lot of players have been saying that PvE is getting more pay to win. Because of the combat rating that they've selected for Inferno 5 here, it's kind of unfortunate because it makes the disparity between the free-to-play and low-spender players and the whales even more apparent. Because assuming you've capped everything like gear ranks, and Reliquary, you're still not able to reach this. And to be able to get the extra combat rating to reach these numbers, unfortunately, you have to be a pretty high spender in the game. So between now and reaching Paragon 700, if we take a look, the server Paragon right now is 650. It's roughly 3 weeks until the server Paragon is 680, and we're going to get the first players reaching Paragon 700. But let's say that you reach Paragon 700, what's going to change? Well, you're going to obviously be able to equip your pre-farmed Paragon 700 gear, and also your pre-farmed Paragon 700 set items. But aside from that, not really much is going to change. We already have our gear rank at max rank. The only thing which could potentially change is going to be the Ancestral Tableau. You might get a little bit more extra combat rating from this, just from the activity that you get, but this is going to be pretty negligible. It isn't really going to be that much. And you're also going to be able to get a bit more combat rating also from the Reliquary. As you get higher Reliquary remains, the combat rating here is going to slightly change. But the majority of the combat rating, like I said, is going to be coming from the legendary items and also the set items. So let's actually take the example of Grinder A here and use him as our baseline. So Grinder A, I showed all of his gear items. All of them were roughly 2,300 combat rating from his legendary gear. And then for his set items, most of them were either 222 or 333. So that makes it 2,224 or 2,244. Let's take the average here as being 2,230. So we have an average of 2,230 for the set items and an average of 2,300 for the legendary items. If we take a look at the combat rating of 222, so a 222 for Paragon 700 is 2,330. So let's just assume that he replaces all of his gear with 222 items from Inferno 5. I'm not sure exactly how he's going to be able to get them, but let's just, for argument's sake, say that he replaces them all with this combat rating here, which is 2,330. Well, if you do that, he's going to gain 30 extra combat rating per legendary item, so that's 30 multiplied by 8, which is 240, and he's going to gain roughly 100 combat rating per piece from the set items. So if we do 100 multiplied by 8, we get 800. And if we add up these two numbers together, we can see that he's going to get a total CR gain from using 222 items from Inferno 5 of 1040. And if we add the 1040 to his current total combat rating, he's actually going to have a total combat rating of 45,885. So the crazy thing about this is that this is actually still 230 points under the combat rating for Inferno 5 dungeons. So this means that even if this player has 222 items from Inferno 5, he's still going to be under the combat rating of Inferno 5, which is exactly what the Redditor said. So I can't believe I'm saying this, but the Redditor is correct. Basically, low spenders or free-to-play players, even if they have exceptional items from Inferno 5, they won't be able to farm Inferno 5, at least not for the first couple of weeks. And bear in mind that for this example, I've assumed that they've somehow managed to get their hands on 222 for every single gear slot, and currently we don't really have that many good ways to get 222 items pre-farmed. I think that one of the only ways that you can do that is going back to the NPC here and converting your Inferno 4 wisps to Inferno 5, and you can also obviously do things like save up mystery legendary items or auto save up the Moonlight Flora event. But aside from that, there aren't really that many good options that we have. So I think that I'm being pretty generous with giving this example. So because of this, I am inclined to agree with some of the comments here, which is that they either made a mistake and they're going to lower the difficulty for Inferno 5, or we're actually going to get a new way to gain combat rating, which might be in the form of 2 gear slots. I'm really hoping that it isn't in the form of 2 gear slots, because this is basically going to open us to having 2 more legendary gems, and this is going to make the gap between free-to-play and spenders even larger, which I don't really want to see. So I'm really hoping that if they do add a new way for us to gain combat rating, that it is free-to-play friendly. So before I end the video, I want to show a different Reddit post from another user which kind of shares the same sentiment here. So let's just switch over to that one here. So here, the title of this post is, "So PvE is now pay to win, my take on this." So this player basically is talking about Gauntlet and how Gauntlet now is basically only accessible to whales, unfortunately. And I'm not going to read through all of this. If you guys want to read through it, I'm going to leave a link to both Reddit posts in the description, but I want to talk about the 2 main points which he mentioned here. So the first one is combat rating, which he says that as of right now, Paragon 650, you need to be a whale, which is 8k plus. So I've explained this number. 8k plus is basically the minimum resonance that you need to have the maximum combat rating per gem. So I'm not going to mention this again. But the second thing which he's touched over here is the immunity shields, which is the bone armor immunity that was nerfed. And also it says that non-whales won't stand a chance against whales regarding this, because they're not able to avoid damage anymore. So we have 2 essences which were nerfed as part of the last major update. One was the parting gift for bone armor, and the other one was the hailstone for the wizard. And basically how these 2 essences used to work is that they give you charges for your character, and each one of these charges gives you full immunity from the next hit. So basically they give you roughly 6 charges of immunity, and now instead of giving you full immunity, they basically block damage equal to percentage of your damage, which is 160%. And the really annoying thing aside from this is that if you get hit for a huge amount of damage, you can actually lose multiple charges of the essence at once, which is really annoying. So because Necro and Wizard were the only classes who had access to essence like these, I can kind of understand Blizzard's decision to want to change how these essences work. But then I saw another change to the major update, which is the change to the Windloft Perfection 6-piece set bonus. So if you didn't know, the Windloft 6-piece bonus had a similar effect to these essence, and this was accessible to all classes. So we can check out a Windloft piece here, and if we take a look at the 6-piece bonus, it says that you gain a shield that grants you 5 charges while 1000 Winds is active, each absorbing damage up to 400% of your damage. So this also used to give you immunity completely, and now it gives you 400% damage. So I'm not too sure why Blizzard has also nerfed this. This would kind of give an even playing field for all classes to have some sort of immunity to damage, but clearly they didn't also want us having this effect. So the only reason I can think of now as to why Blizzard has changes is because they want us to interact with the boss mechanics rather than being completely immune. But I think that this is actually a really poor decision because of the fact, like I've mentioned, that combat rating in general is going to affect the damage that you do, the damage taken. Eventually, for low spender players, they're not really going to be able to stand a chance anymore for higher end content like the gauntlets, and that's because they're going to be taking a huge amount of damage while also dealing a lot less damage. And even if they're a really good player and able to dodge most of the boss mechanics, if they just get hit once, they're going to get one shot pretty much. And then even if they are able to survive, like I said, because they're dealing so much less damage, it has a higher chance that the boss is going to enrage, and then eventually they're going to get one shot. So overall, I want to give my final thoughts about this. In my opinion, PvE has always been pay to win to an extent, but now unfortunately the advantage of combat rating, which you get as a bonus from your legendary gem rank, is really noticeable, unfortunately, because of the number that they've chosen for the Inferno 5 difficulty, like I've said, and this kind of shines a light on the disparity between the non-spenders and the high spenders of the game. A potential solution to this could be to actually remove the extra combat rating that you gain from these gems. I mean, you're already gaining the resonance, which gives you a huge advantage to the base attributes. I'm not too sure why the game also gives you the extra combat rating here. Unfortunately, I think that because this is something that has been in the game since the start, I don't think that this is going to change, but I really do wish Blizzard would take a look at this again. Like I said, I don't think it would be a good idea for us to get extra slots, because this would make the difference even more noticeable. Also, don't think that hard locking the difficulty, like some of the other commenters were saying, is a really good solution. It kind of takes away from the fun of the game. A lot of players want to be able to choose the difficulty that they farm on, and if they want a bit more challenged, then they should be able to do so. So this is a little bit frustrating. Personally, I'm going to hold out and wait for the next patch. I do think that Blizzard will probably be addressing this very soon. And like I said, they're either going to reduce the combat rating, or there will be a new combat rating rework. At least I hope so. This is just purely speculation on my side. There isn't any news which I've heard about this. But as always, I'm really curious to hear what you guys think about this and your opinion about Inferno 5, the whole direction of the game. So do leave a comment down below. For my next video, I'm probably going to talk more about pre-farming. As you can see, I do have a lot of Inferno 5 greens, and I also do have quite a lot of wisps farmed up. I think I have about 400 here, so I will be making another video because this video has gone on for a bit too long now. This video did take me a while to make, so please do consider subscribing if you like this kind of content. But for now, I'm going to be signing off, and I'll catch you all in the next video. Peace.